The rain didn't just fall, it attacked, a billion tiny silver needles shattering against the pavement. Liam's world was a small, warm island of lamplight and the scent of paste, his big, calloused hands fumbling with a second grader's diorama of the solar system. Saturn's rings were stubborn. His son, Noah, slept a room away, the soft, rhythmic sound of his breathing the only music Liam ever listened to anymore. It was a good sound. A safe sound. The cornerstone of the quiet, predictable life he'd built from the ashes of his old one. Then the knock came. It was 2:03 a.m. A frantic, staccato beat against the front door, so faint it was almost swallowed by the storm. Liam froze, a glob of glue suspended from the tip of the bottle. No one came here, not this late. His heart, a traitorous drum, began to pound a warning against his ribs. He stood, his joints protesting, and moved to the door, peering through the peephole. She was a drenched sparrow, huddled in on herself. Water streamed from her dark, tangled hair, plastering a simple white dress to her shivering form. And even through the distorted fisheye lens, he could see it. She was devastatingly, impossibly gorgeous. Not in a polished way, but in the way of a forgotten constellation, a beauty that felt ancient and untouchable. His every instinct, honed by years of solitary parenthood, screamed at him to call the police, to not open this door to a stranger in the dead of night. But her shivering was a violent, full-body tremor, and her eyes, wide and lost, held a desperation that bypassed logic. He turned the deadbolt. The door swung inward, and a gust of wind-driven rain lashed into the hallway. She stumbled back a step, her arms wrapped around herself. I'm sorry, she stammered, her teeth chattering. My phone died. I saw your light. Her voice was a melody he didn't recognize, but its cadence felt familiar. A ghost of a feeling, nothing more. Liam's protective walls, usually impenetrable, crumbled. Come in, you're freezing. His voice was gruff, unused to strangers. She staggered over the threshold, dripping a puddle onto the worn hardwood. He closed the door, shutting out the raging night. The warmth of the house seemed to shock her system, and her shivering intensified. He grabbed the thick, woolen throw from the sofa and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her skin was ice. Thank you, she whispered, pulling the blanket tight. Her eyes, a startling shade of sea green, scanned the room, the crayon drawings on the fridge, the small sneakers by the door, the half-finished diorama on the coffee table. Then her gaze landed fully on him. It was a searching, intense look, as if she were trying to read the fine print on his soul. Liam stood frozen, caught in the spotlight of her attention. He saw the moment her confusion deepened, her brow furrowing. She took a half-step closer, her head tilting. And then she said it. You feel familiar. The words, soft and utterly bewildered, hit him like a physical blow. The air left his lungs. It was a line, the kind of thing you'd hear in a bad movie, but the raw, genuine puzzlement in her eyes made it real. It made it terrifying. I don't think we've met, he managed, his throat tight. He would have remembered. A man doesn't forget a face like that. A face that, now he looked, sent a strange, aching echo through him. I know, she said, shaking her head as if to clear it. It's stupid. I'm sorry. It's just a feeling. Like a déjà vu. She offered a weak, trembling smile. I'm Alara. Liam, he replied automatically. Let me get you some tea. You need to warm up. He fled to the kitchen, his mind racing. Familiar. The word echoed in the silent spaces of his heart, spaces he kept locked and dark. He filled the kettle, his hands unsteady. He was a 38-year-old single dad, a carpenter. His life was about stability, about being a rock for Noah. There was no room for mysterious, beautiful women who showed up in storms and spoke like characters from a dream he'd once had. When he returned with 2 steaming mugs, she was standing by the bookshelf, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of a framed photograph. His blood ran cold. It was the only picture he kept of her. Of Sarah, your wife, Alara asked softly, without turning around. She passed away, Liam said, the words as heavy and familiar as stones. 5 years ago. Alara turned, her green eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I'm so sorry. She's beautiful. She looks kind. She was, Liam whispered, the old, familiar ache blooming in his chest. He looked from the photo of Sarah's smiling, sunny face to Alara's rain-streaked, ethereal one. There was no resemblance. None at all. And yet, the feeling persisted, a nagging, impossible sense of connection. They sat on the sofa, the diorama between them. The silence was thick, charged with unspoken questions. "It's brain cancer," Alara said suddenly, her voice quiet but clear. She wasn't looking at him, but at her hands wrapped around the warm mug. "Inoperable. That's where I was coming from." A final opinion. It was a no. The confession hung in the air, stark and brutal. Liam's breath caught. The pieces clicked into place. The late-night drive, the shivering that wasn't just from the cold, the desperate look in her eyes. She wasn't just lost. She was fleeing. "Alara, he had no words. What could he say? "They said I have maybe 6 months. Maybe less," she continued, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "I got in the car and I just drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just ended up here." She finally looked at him, her gaze piercing. "On your doorstep." "Why your doorstep, Liam? Why do you feel like a memory I can't quite reach?" Before he could form a response, a small, sleepy voice came from the hallway. "Daddy." Noah stood there, rubbing his eyes, his favorite stuffed dinosaur dangling from his hand. He looked at the strange woman on the sofa, his curiosity outweighing his sleepiness. Alara's face transformed. The sorrow and confusion melted away, replaced by a look of such pure, unguarded wonder that it stole the air from the room. She looked at Noah, and a soft, genuine smile touched her lips. "Hey, buddy," Liam said, his voice rough. "Everything's okay. Go back to sleep." But Noah took a few steps forward, his big, brown eyes fixed on Alara. He wasn't shy, he was mesmerized. Alara leaned forward slightly, her voice a soft whisper. "Hello, Noah." Liam froze. He had never told her his son's name. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock and the fading patter of rain. Liam's blood seemed to turn to ice in his veins. He stared at Alara, his mind reeling. "How did you know his name?" The question came out as a low, dangerous growl, all his earlier compassion frozen solid by a sudden, primal fear. Alara's eyes widened, the same shock reflected in them. She looked from Liam's hardened face to Noah's innocent, trusting one. Her hand flew to her mouth. I don't know," she stammered, her voice trembling. "It just came to me. Like the feeling with you. It felt right." Noah, oblivious to the tension, patted closer. "You're pretty," he stated, with the blunt honesty of a child. A sob caught in Alara's throat. She looked utterly shattered. "Thank you, sweetheart." Liam stood up, placing himself physically between his son and this enigma of a woman. "Noah, back to bed. Now." The command was sharper than he intended, and the boy's face fell before he turned and shuffled back to his room, casting a last, confused glance over his shoulder. When Liam turned back to Alara, the vulnerability was gone from his face, replaced by the stern mask of a protector. "Who are you, really? I told you, Alara Vance." She was pleading now, her composure completely gone. "I swear, I've never seen you before tonight. I don't know your son's name. But when I looked at him, it was just there. In my mind, like a song I'd forgotten I knew." She wrapped her arms around herself, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "This is insane. I should go." "You're not going anywhere in this state," Liam said, the pragmatist in him overriding the suspicion. "You can take the guest room. We'll figure this out in the morning." He showed her to the small, neat room at the end of the hall, his movements stiff and formal. He gave her a towel and an old t-shirt to sleep in. Their fingers didn't touch during the exchange. "Liam," she said softly as he turned to leave. "I'm not a threat. I'm just a very lost woman." He just nodded, unable to speak, and closed the door. Sleep was impossible. He paced the living room, the events of the night playing on a loop in his mind. Familiar. Noah, the way she had looked at his son, not with a stranger's curiosity, but with a deep, aching tenderness that made no sense. He stopped in front of Sarah's photograph. His beautiful, vibrant Sarah, taken by a sudden, brutal aneurysm. There had been no goodbye. One minute she was laughing, the next minute she was gone, leaving a Liam-shaped and Noah-shaped hole in the universe. A soft sound from the guest room broke his reverie. A muffled cry. He crept to the door and listened. It was Alara, crying in her sleep. The sound was so full of despair it felt like a physical weight in the hallway. All his anger and suspicion dissolved, replaced by a profound, gut-wrenching pity. He remembered the raw finality in her voice. Inoperable. He didn't sleep. He made coffee as the first gray light of dawn filtered through the windows. When Alara emerged, she looked pale and exhausted, swimming in his too big t-shirt. She had folded the blanket neatly. "I'll call you a tow truck," he said, handing her a mug. "For your car. Thank you. For everything." Her voice was hollow. They sat in silence until the truck arrived. As she stood to leave, Noah came out, fully dressed, his diorama in his hands. He walked right up to Alara. "I finished it," he said, holding out Saturn with its lopsided, glittery rings. "You can have it, for when you're sad." Alara's composure broke completely. She knelt, tears streaming down her face, and pulled Noah into a gentle, fierce hug. Liam's throat constricted. It was the hug of a mother. It was a hug Noah hadn't received in 5 years. "Thank you, my brave boy," she whispered into his hair. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." She stood, gave Liam one last, inscrutable look, a mixture of gratitude, sorrow, and that lingering, impossible recognition, and walked out the door. The house felt emptier than it ever had. The silence was deafening. Liam tried to go back to his routine, but the echo of her presence was everywhere. For days, Noah asked about the pretty lady who knew my name. A week later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. His name was written in an elegant, looping script. Inside was a letter. "Dear Liam, please don't think me a coward for writing this. I couldn't say it to your face. The truth is too big, and my time for big things is too short. First, thank you for your kindness in the storm, for the tea, for the safety of your home, for your beautiful, kind son. Second, I lied. I knew why your doorstep felt like a destination. I knew the moment I saw Sarah's photograph. 5 years ago, I was in a car accident. I was pregnant. I lost a lot of blood, and my heart stopped for 47 seconds. They brought me back, but I lost the baby. In the aftermath, I needed a transfusion. A massive one. The nurses said the blood came from a local donor drive, a rush order for a community in tragedy. I never knew who the donor was. I never tried to find out. I just lived with this strange, borrowed life, always feeling like a part of me was missing, and a part of someone else was there in its place. I'd have flashes, sometimes. A child's laugh that felt like mine. The smell of sawdust. A sense of overwhelming, protective love. When I saw you, Liam, I felt it. A pull, a hum in my blood. And when I saw Noah, I knew him. I knew his name because somewhere inside me, in the very cells that keep me alive, is a piece of the mother who loved him. The blood that saved my life was Sarah's. She is the ghost in my veins. She is the reason your face felt like home. I came to your doorstep because a part of her, living inside me, was trying to come home. I don't have 6 months. The doctors gave me weeks. When you read this, I will likely be gone. Please don't be sad. Tell Noah that the pretty lady thought he was the most wonderful boy in the world, and that his mommy must have been, too. She saved me, and in sending me to your door that night, I like to think she was, in her own way, checking in on you both one last time. With all the gratitude my heart can hold. Alara." The letter fluttered from Liam's numb fingers. He sank to his knees in the hallway, the same spot where she had stood, shivering and lost. He didn't cry. He couldn't. The revelation was too vast, too profound for tears. He looked up, through the blur in his eyes, at the photograph of Sarah. Her smiling, vibrant face. And he finally understood. The familiar feeling wasn't a memory. It was a heartbeat. It was the last, lingering echo of his wife's love, carried on a storm, and delivered to his door at 2 a.m., just to say goodbye.